All right, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the DoersCast, where we feature doers, who are people who not only talk about their ideas, their dreams, their ideal lifestyle, but actually goes out there and takes action. In other words, they're out there doing it. And we want to inspire y'all to go out there and chase your wildest ambitions by featuring these doers and their stories right here. I'm your co-host, Johnson Din.
And I'm your co-host, Andrew Chang. So today we have a very special guest. He is the founder of Riders Share, which is a motorcycle ride-sharing company, very similar to Airbnb or like Turo, but for motorcycles. And he's come a long way with this company. They've raised millions of dollars in funding for it, and Mr. met him at a networking event a couple days ago in Austin, and so now here he is on the podcast with us. But yeah, you can find him on his socials at Riders Share. And without further ado, please welcome our very special guest, Guillermo. Hey, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, Andrew. How are you doing? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
We're glad you're on. How have you been?
Good. Just survived the pandemic. All good.
Good to hear.
All right, so we'll just start off with the basics. Tell the audience a little bit about Riders Share and how it started.
Yeah, so Rideshare, I had the idea when I crashed a motorcycle, and I could not afford to buy a new one. I didn't use my motorcycle that often because you cannot really go to work on one, right? If it's raining, if it's too cold or too hot, it's just a disaster. The motorcycles in the US are like a toy, a luxury toy. And I thought, hey, why instead of buying one, I'm just gonna rent one every other weekend, But I discovered to do that it would cost $200 a day, which is might as well buy one at that point.
Yeah.
And there's some reasons for that. There's like people in the motorcycle rental industry struggles with the seasonality of the business, the lack of fleet deals like the car rental business does, and so I figure with the peer-to-peer model, you don't have those problems. You can cut the cost more than half, and you can increase the variety of motorcycles available for rent to make it a viable option. So instead of owning a motorcycle, you can just rent, save money, and access a wider variety of bikes.
Wow, okay. So what were some of the obstacles faced when making this kind of idea come to life?
I think for us, the biggest obstacle was the insurance piece. So insurance companies are notoriously conservative. Mm-hmm. They're in the business of mitigating risk. And here I come like, hey man, write me an insurance policy for motorcycles and peer-to-peer rentals.
Yeah, they're both new.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, both risky.
It's like
and new.
the combination of like two very risky things.
Very risky business. It took me years to figure this out. And we got into a point where we started our own captive insurance company in order to reduce insurance costs and mitigate risk. But at the beginning, I was losing $100 on every rental just to prove, create a track record with insurance companies that we could manage risk. And in order to get that first insurance policy, I went through so many brokers. I befriended the broker's daughter. It was quite a process.
So, how did you get into because I know you got your MBA at UCLA, right? And so you were studying a lot of business stuff, and did a lot of that help translate into your work
world.
at starting Riders Share? And did you always know you had those entrepreneurship skills that you could start it?
Well, I started Rideshare before I got my MBA. And the thing is, I had a full-time job the entire time. I worked in the auto industry for 7 years, and I was working with Honda at the time. And I was, taking customer service phone calls while in a cubicle, when nobody was looking. And it got to a point where it was just not sustainable. And so I figured if I get an MBA, I would have more free time to run my business. And UCLA gave me a full scholarship. So basically I for 2 years I didn't have to worry about my living expenses, and I had no free time, and they have a network, and
Awesome.
it's good MBA programs do teach very useful entrepreneurial skills. For example, and I've come to experience some of these. Like we had classes where they taught us when one of your top executives gets a DUI, when an investor, how to read in between the lines. This investor doesn't want to invest in your company. They want to invest in your company, fire you, and replace you to turn a company around.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to ruin your startup experience from the moment you incorporate it and assign equity to different people to the moment you sell it. That most
Yeah,
famously WeWork. Yeah, WeWork is the class. Yeah, and it's just all along the way. There's so many ways to ruin it, and so
So
the MBA really helps mitigate the risk. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get it rolling? Like from taking that idea to like building that momentum.
We were really lucky in that we were the first in our space, and so I launched a product and I emailed every single motorcycle journalist. And motorcycle journalists, all they do is the same fucking thing. Like, I rode this motorcycle, it's amazing. I rode this other motorcycle, it's amazing, right? And so it was an interesting story for them, and that got us our first press, and we got like 500 motorcycles out of that. The backlinks from those media outlets also helped build our organic traffic presence, or SEO, and that was the first boost, and we went from 0 to 60,000 a month in 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, hemorrhaging money, my own money, because I wasn't funded. I was bootstrapping, and before I got my first little check, I had borrowed $60,000 in total to make it happen, and put $100,000 of my own money. But yeah, and then again, all this because the insurance, we lost money with each transaction, right? But I knew that once we had this track record, not only would I be able to get a better pricing, but it's a huge moat compared to potential entrants that came afterwards, right? That don't have this data.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. So, and you took out all that debt to basically get your first first few thousand, 100 customers, so they can collect data to better analyze who you should lend out to, basically. Like who should be able to rent a motorcycle, right?
Well, at that point, our scale was too small to do that.
Yeah.
But it was enough to tell the insurance company, hey, look, I have completed, couple thousand rental days, and we only had 2 accidents. It's, so you don't need to charge me $100 per rental day. How charge me, 55. And then 3 months later, I lowered it all the way to 25. And then from there, that our unit economics were so improved that I was able to raise a pre-seed round. And then once we had the pre-seed round, we scaled even more, and then we started using data to predict the risk. And right now, I can say, but I always say is that we have a huge competitive advantage. We have a direct competitor, and they are spending more than twice as much as we are on insurance today. So I can out advertise them, and then the worst part is the best part is we cherry pick the best customers, and I outprice the ones that I don't want, and they go to my competitor and crash their motorcycles. So this is a very sustainable competitive advantage. In addition to a marketplace network effects, right? Yeah. Network effects are sustainable, but I think it's been shown over the last few years that they're not enough to be a moat like Facebook. And so, but we have the advantage of high network effects and a risk management component that combined make it really, really difficult to compete against us on cost.
Wow.
I
Thought
see.
it out. Okay, that's really smart.
Yeah.
Oh wow. And also, but for right now, you're using like machine learning algorithms to figure out, who's safe to lend out to, right? And so like what kind of goes into that model? Like what do you consider for potential customers?
Honestly, we do most of the same data points that traditional insurance companies use, like credit scores, driving records, demographics, what kind of motorcycle, and then some that they don't use, like how far in advance are they booking the motorcycle and other behavior on the website. We also know when they create an account, we can tell what type of phone subscription they have. So the prepaid phone versus an AT&T subscription, and that also has a little bit of predictive power. And then traditional insurance carriers, they play in these regulated spaces that they must use actuarial tables. Our space is not regulated like that, so we can use machine learning and get really, really good at it. We don't have that much data, we don't have millions of customers, but we're really good at predicting the risk already, and that has allowed us to have better gross margins than car insurance companies or that have been doing this for years, even though it is a much riskier space. That's something else I learned in my prior career, is that people are not very good at measuring risk. They tend to exaggerate risk, and so when it comes to insurance of high risk assets, people overestimate the probability that they will crash a motorcycle, that they will get into an accident, and they're willing to pay more for to mitigate that risk.
Oh yeah, that's true. Because humans like just focus more on like the downside.
Right.
Yeah.
For example, the pandemic, right? It's everyone freaked out, but like the reality is that it was just it was the third cause of death in 2020. It wasn't even the second, and so like nobody's panicking about dying from heart attack tomorrow, right? Nobody's doing anything on obesity, right?
Yeah.
And so the way humans perceive risk is very irrational, and so that's you can use data to take advantage of it.
Wow. And did you learn that from like all the analyst positions you've had in the past, or like was it just in you already that you were just analytical and very like? Was it something did you learn that from all the analyst positions you've had in the past, or did you just have that naturally from growing up?
Human biases.
Yeah, and like knowing about like risk and all that. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both. I was an autistic child. I went through a lot of therapy, and you wouldn't recognize me from 10 years ago, from 20 years ago. So I'm deeply analytical and weird, but so that's why I got into data analytics and was good at it. But the risk piece is just I don't remember how I learned that. I think I was working in subprime risk and subprime auto loans, and it was the most profitable product for General Motors in the auto finance space, despite the recession, despite everything that happened with the subprime mortgage market. And so so I learned there that high risk means high reward. That and that it's it is very well known. They also teach it in the MBA that there's a heuristic. There's multiple different types of biases that humans have in decision making, and that if you're not aware of them, you're going to make bad business decisions. And it's very well known that humans are just terrible at measuring risk, right?
Yeah.
So, going to your, like you said, you're autistic, and that like it helps you think differently, right? And you said that it makes you like very analytical. Like, how else does it like has it affected like your mindset? I guess
You're thinking. Yeah.
your thinking.
I don't know. I mean, I just know that like when I was 21 years old, my mom told me, "Hey, look, by the way, you were 2 years old. You stopped talking for several months, and nobody will touch you, and you live in your own dream world, and we put you for a lot of therapy." And when I was little, I memorized the history of every country in the world, and just weird shit like that. But I come a long way, and it's like so I used to have really really poor emotional intelligence. It's still not great, but I'm getting better. And but where it helps is that I don't really listen to my emotions very much. Um, I I don't go with my gut feeling ever, because my whole life my gut feeling has never worked for me. So I go everything by data, and that's where I think making risk-based pricing decisions comes easy for me, because
Oh yeah, and it must have been like kind of annoying for dealing with business people like venture capitalists because they kind of go on their gut based, right? Like they don't listen to data all the time. And have you ever like faced an obstacle where someone listened more to their gut instead of like the actual data you had for you?
they do both. You need the data as well, but you're 100% right. They love confidence. They don't want you to be honest. Like the reason why women get funded less frequently is because they're more honest about their shit. Men are just like, bro, I'm gonna build you a giant skyscraper. It's gonna be amazing. Let's do it. And people are naturally drawn to confidence. And so I've learned that the next time I go to raise money, I'm gonna pretend that everything's gonna be okay. I have everything under control. Guys, I'm gonna build a flying motorcycle worth $500 billion in 5 years. Okay, this is me your money. It's so easy. It's so easy. Unfortunately, that's they rely a lot on gut feeling. When I fundraised, I didn't know that. I've spoken to 100 VCs before I finally got around, and I was very data driven, and they liked that. It got me far along, but never able to close the deal because I was honest, like, hey man, honestly, I don't know how big the market is, how big it can get. Honestly, I have my doubts too.
Yeah, definitely. Like a lot of these VCs, they're just like overly optimistic, I feel like. And do you feel like you are more of like a optimistic thinker or like a realistic thinker?
I think I'm optimistic, I was really optimistic, I guess, and then over the years I've grown really jaded.
Yeah.
Like if people ask me, hey, I was starting a company, I try to persuade them from doing it. Like you should not start a company unless you really know what you're doing. You have an advantage over everyone else in your field. You have a lot of experience, or maybe you don't have a lot of experience, but you're building something that is so new, like Mark Zuckerberg, that no one else can beat you at it.
Yeah.
No one has experience on it. But like unless it's something like that, experiences like when you are in your 20s, it's so difficult to understand how important experience is, man.
Yeah.
Did you have that? Like, do you think you were in that position when you started?
Yeah, I didn't. I failed twice before succeeding this third time, right? Um, I tried to hire and to outsource software development. I tried to find insurance and stuff, and it just didn't work. But not because of the insurance, but because the website was terrible. And you know, anyone that has done this before could have told you, like, hey, dude, don't go cheap. Don't hire a software developer that you never met before from India, right? Like, find a technical co-founder. And and there's more to it. Like, once you start a company, like there's so many problems. Like, I didn't know people were going to try to use fake identities to try to steal my motorcycles. I didn't know people would report payments as fraud, even though they're real. Just just to try not to pay. Like there's so many things. The insurance piece, I knew it was going to be a challenge, and I figured that out. But that's just, it's so much more difficult and complicated than you can ever imagine. There's so many little pieces that need to work, in order for it to succeed.
So when you said you failed the launch, was it like you opened it up, like you opened your service up and then like just like no customers came, so then you had to like shut down again?
Like I put an app on on the App Store,
Mm-hmm.
and it only allowed people to list, and you were not able to rent a motorcycle.
I see.
And I spent $25,000 in my own savings in this app,
Wow.
and then the developers wanted more money, so they continued, but they hadn't done any work in 6 months. They ripped me off. They call, there's an expression for it. They I don't know. They use the code to as leverage because I didn't have access to the code,
Mhm.
and so I had to start over. Yeah, the second time, I outsourced a website because I learned that it's really difficult to market the app on its own. Website have organic traffic from Google, at least for my vertical, for my category, and so the marketing piece was a lot easier on a website. And same thing, it was very poorly built by contractors, and also the insurance company I was using at the time refused to pay for claims, so I just sat it down. Finally, I met a technical co-founder in 2017 on Reddit. The guy loves motorcycles, and he wanted to use the same technical platform that I wanted to use, React, and he was great. I got really lucky with Brandon. We've been working together for 4 years now. I went to his wedding and everything, but yeah, I wasted a good 4 years learning.
I mean, if you're learning, it's
So that matters, yeah. Like
yeah.
failure is about like learning. Oh wow.
Yeah. And the challenge is going to end there. Once you start scaling a company, to learn how to hire, to recruit executives, build processes. Like what works at a small scale doesn't work at a big scale, and
Yeah.
you're always constantly learning, which is awesome. It's really challenging, and you are never bored. And so it doesn't matter if I'm making half the money I was making working for Hyundai, because I'm like 3 times happier.
Wait, I'm surprised that you found this person you wanted to find on Reddit.
Yes.
Wait, how did that come about? Like, what did you search up? And
So I went to Reddit motorcycles, and I said, "Hey, I'm starting the Airbnb of motorcycles. I'm looking for a React developer." He was the first person and only person to respond to my post, and yeah, it worked out. I also tried other co-founders that and a couple more. They came in, they worked for 2 weeks. They realized how incredibly complex this website actually is behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, man, I'm gonna go do something else." Like, it's a lot of things seem really easy on the surface, but are not. Now that I've started a company, when I walk into a restaurant, I really freaking appreciate all the artwork, how that is on the menu, all the thought that was put into it. It's so difficult to start a business, and most people don't appreciate it.
Yeah. Going back to like the learning thing, you said you feel like you kind of like didn't use your time as well as you could in the beginning. What would you have done differently to maybe like learn faster or yeah?
Meet people with experience in what you're doing. Especially executives high up there. It's really difficult to do. And the MBA helped me a lot with that. But I would say my business wouldn't work if I hadn't met an ex-Duro executive that taught me, a lot of Duro's practices, and introduced me down the road when once we were bigger, and introduced me to an ex-Duro executive that went on to become a venture partner. And I met this Duro person through a friend from the MBA program, right?
No.
And I didn't have a network at all. I'm from Peru. I had no context to rely on here, right? And, so I had to build my own network.
I see. Is that why you still try to like go to a lot of these like networking events now in Austin to like try to meet new people?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was recruiting a senior marketing executive. That's why I went to that event. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Any success?
Not at the event, but there's certainly a lot of people that used to work at Verbo in Austin. So hopefully, I'll meet someone and it'll be like random and everything will work out, or not, or maybe things will not work out, and whatever.
Yeah, so something I find really interesting is that you were able to learn emotional intelligence, right? Like, because for autistic people, it's a lot harder to have that naturally, and so they have to learn it. But how did you like actually learn EI? Because it's really important for business.
So I don't know. I mean, it's I've read research on the topic, and apparently like 1% of of these severe cases recover and go on to live normal lives. And they look at their brains and they are rewired. They don't look like the brains of a normal person, but they don't look like the brain of an autistic person. If I knew the answer, like, there would be a cure, right? There's also different types of autism, like with different symptoms and stuff. It's just a very poorly understood disease because it affects a very small percentage of people. So like, I don't know, but I do know that even when I was like 10 years old and I was obsessing over military leaders and and business people and stuff. I knew conceptually that being good at people and being a good leader uh, was more important than being intelligent when it comes to success in life. You name it in any realm, right?
Yeah.
And so I made it an active mission to get better at it, and that's still not the reason why I got better at it, because like most autistic people are that way. They try to get better and they can't. So I don't know. Uh, Something my mother did with the therapy. I don't know, or maybe it's good luck, genes. Who the hell knows, man? But
Yeah.
But were there any steps that you took, like for the mission? You were on a mission to like improve it. So like, what kind of steps did you personally take to try to improve it?
um, when I was in high school, I um, I didn't fit in. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Why?
Yeah. Were you in Peru in high school?
Yeah, in Peru, and uh, and I didn't know why the hell everyone was bullying me. Why they thought why everything I said was being criticized, right? And I was so stressed out about the situation that I lost a compare in the back of my head.
Mhm.
And again, I have to thank my parents because they didn't just with some you could when it's due to stress, you can put the corticosteroid to make it grow back. But my parents didn't think that was enough. They were like, "You need to go to a psychologist." And that guy was really helpful. He gave me a conceptual framework on how to understand people, how people function.
Wow.
Not that I could. Okay.
Because they're so logical. So you understood people to like you understood people and emotions like through the most like logical, analytical viewpoint.
Yes, and that was a start. And then he told me you need to spend all the time you can with people. I don't care if you don't if you need to take risks, and I want you to break rules. Go get grounded. You want to get grounded? Me? I never. Yeah, it was great. I was such a good boy, and he told me to go be a bad boy, and yeah, and it kind of helped a lot because I've been around people so much, and I forced myself to be at the social setting so much that that I feel like I've seen it all, man. Like
Hmm.
you start seeing patterns, right? And it took me like it's still and it took me like 4 years since that conversation
Yeah.
till I figure out, wow, like all you have to do is like be confident, right? And then like everything seems to work, better. Like people like you better and stuff like that.
Mm.
And then it took me like 10 years to actually become confident.
Let's see.
um, and that's it from experience, right? Once you walk into a situation with 20 people, once you've done it 1,000 times, you know what to say, you know how they react, like you know what's cool, what's not cool, and then something magical started happening in my 20s where I started to like actually feel what other people feel better, like make more sense of the emotions, and now I'm at a point where I can trust my gut feeling and not just my brain. And
Uh,
that movies make me cry. They didn't used to make me cry anymore. It's so fucking weird, man. But like I I I used to watch movies and totally didn't understand what was going on. Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow. You actually, oh my gosh. Okay, so they told you to be a bad boy. Is that why you started riding? Is that why you started riding motorcycles?
No, I actually used to surf back in Peru.
Um,
Yeah, it was awesome. And then when I moved to Texas, I missed that feeling. And like, skydiving was a little pricey and out of the way. So I got into motorcycles. My dad has a motorcycle, but he would never let me ride it. But yeah, I got into motorcycles, and it's one incredible adrenaline rush.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Although not gonna lie, I also like feeling like a badass, like ooh, I'm cool.
I like that.
Yeah. So like talking about what like motivates you. You said that you always want to like live up to the promises that you put to like your customers and like the people who back you. And like what else do you think is like a big driver that like gets you up every day and it's like, oh, like I want to go do this.
You're not gonna believe me, but honestly, I saw how Elon Musk is doing all this shit with cars and space rockets at the same time,
Hmm.
and I'm like, dude,
If he can do it, you can do it.
yeah, if you can do it, I could easily become a multi-billionaire and then go do good things. Like personally, I care a lot about poverty in developing countries, and I think that the only way to solve that shit is if somebody with money lobbies the right politicians to pass the right laws and fight corruption and all this shit.
Hmm.
I studied economics and political science, and I came out really disillusioned, and I wanted to be an economist and help with poverty and shit, but I realized they don't really help. The only way to make a difference is with power.
Mm.
Well, if you could change the world in like one way, like do you find anything inefficient about how the world's running, about how business people are running? Like what would you change in that?
Oh, dude, if the entire world had the same government, the same rule of law, and maybe even the same language, oh my God, the amount of wealth we would have. Like there's so much inefficiency to the myriad of legal systems and inability for people to move from one country to another. It's just so stupid, like
Hmm.
nationalities are just an outdated concept, makes no sense.
Yeah. So you'd remove like the politics of things, basically.
I guess, I mean, politics are always going to be there, right? I'm just saying, like, if we had one system of law for the entire world,
Yeah.
one government, one country, it would make business just boom. It would be unbelievable. Like, the waste. Oh my God, the amount of poverty because people can't just leave and come to the States, right? It's just absurd. But yeah, what are you gonna do?
What kind of person would you want to rule this kind of world? Like would you want Elon Musk, like someone like kind of nerdy to rule the world, or like, do you think nerds rule the world basically? Do you think they should?
No, man, that's also. I mean, one problem with is that like sociopaths are attracted to power.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so a lot of people like if they measure politicians and like 5% of American congressmen are sociopaths, and which is like significantly higher than the ratio for the average American, right? And I'm confident if they did the same thing with CEOs, like they would find something similar. Like Elon Musk is awesome, but he's also a total asshole to his people, right? As is Jeff Bezos, as was Steve Jobs, and now we're coming to find out that Bill Gates wasn't an angel either, right? And so the problem with power is that it attracts sociopaths, and I am trying to. If I wasn't running this startup, I would be working on how to solve that. How do you create a system where people really get promoted due to their ability to contribute to society, and not because of their ability to work the system. Um, this is something that not just companies need, but also governments. And yeah, man, I really don't believe in democracy. I would rather have a system where the people at the top are the best technically capable to run things,
Yeah.
but it's just not possible.
Nowadays, yeah.
Yeah. I think democracy is the best thing we have until we figure that shit out.
Do you are you like do you think you're like in a happy place right now with like what you're doing, and like if not, like what do you think is like preventing that?
And I mean, I'm always stressed out running out of money, right? That's the problem with starting your own company. But I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. Like, we're doing millions of dollars a year. I've learned so much that even if this doesn't pan out, I could land on my feet. Like a big tech company would be dying to hire somebody like me. So I'm like pretty freaking happy. And
That's good.
I run, it's really cool to be able to create your own company culture.
Yeah.
We were all mobile before the pandemic happened. And because both my co-founder and I, we love video games, and we grew up, playing StarCraft in really coherent teams without the need of being in person. Like, so you don't need to be in person to produce great results. And maybe it's also because I'm a little autistic and I don't like being around people. But the whole, I'm living my dream. I'm not making as much money as I was in the corporate world, but it's awesome, dude. I can work until 3 a.m. in the morning if I want, take a nap in the middle of the day, honor my Spanish heritage. And it's I love it. I'm really happy.
Awesome.
There were moments though where we weren't like this. Like at the beginning, it was so freaking hard. I lost hair again a couple of years ago.
Wow.
In 2020, I had $300,000 in debt this time.
Jeez.
For I closed that 2 million round. Yeah.
Wow.
You just do whatever you have to do to make it work. And marketplaces are particularly hard. You need a lot of supply and a lot of demand. You need to serve 2 different customers, and they're not sexy anymore with venture capitalists. So that you have to meet really, really ambitious milestones in order to justify their risk. And so it's too bad though, because marketplaces have excellent modes and outcomes. If you can, but they have a much higher probability of failure.
I see. Did you ever struggle with like managing your time with like all this?
You know what? No. A lot of people do, but I was able to complete my full-time MBA program, launch RiderShare, and grow it, to more than $1 million in revenue per year, and while doing the MBA, and also partied a lot with the MBA kids, in my free time.
Yeah.
And so like, no.
Do you think it's because like you have like the right priorities, like you prioritize like RiderShare, and then so it's like, oh, once I get this done, then like everything else is like kind of just like whatever.
I notice a lot of people pretend they're working, but they're not really working, or get distracted really easily. If I work 8 hours, I'm doing it nonstop 8 hours, right? Like I don't know none of that bullshit. And usually it's like not every day, but like some days I'll work 15 hours in a row with no interruptions, no lunch, no dinner, no nothing. You just get focused like that, right? And you get shit done, and you solve really difficult problems, and anyways. And then there are days that I only work 1 hour, or I do a bare minimum. And actually, most days I do less. But it's important to prioritize and focus on the right things, not waste your time. And then really not waste your time. Like when I have to, when things are busy, I will get out of bed, go straight to the computer, don't shower, no breakfast, no napping, and then just work, right? It's hard to explain, but like, you have to really prioritize every time decision, like I eat my food out of the cans cold because I hate wasting time on warming up food, it adds up. That's like 5 minutes a day, every single day of your life. Fuck that. And so I guess I am very anal about how I use my time, but then it allows me to have the freedom to maintain relationships.
Definitely, yeah, that's like a super important thing. Like a lot of people will care a lot about like how they spend their money, but they don't care that much about how they spend their time. And in my opinion, like time is like the most valuable thing. Like it's worth so much more than money, because it's like you can't get time back, So
it's
You're right. And one of the fucked up things on starting a company is that you will probably don't have a lot of time for friends, family, love life,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I can tell you how many dates I've gone where I was like, hey, excuse me, I need to customer service.
Oh,
Brother, sir, can I help you? Right? And
yeah.
yeah, it's not cool. So you have to always be mindful when you choose to go into entrepreneurship that you're gonna sacrifice a lot.
Yeah.
That and relationships are more important than money, than anything. You know?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What are your like priorities looking like right now?
Right now, I'm desperately trying to hire a marketing executive with prior experience in the Australian economy or similar growth marketer. I have a couple of candidates, and I'm now desperately trying to convince them to join me because it's kind of a requirement for my existing investors to extend to give us another $500,000, which we'll use to grow this summer. We'll spend it all in the next 2 months to grow.
Mm.
Because we basically can only grow during the summers, right? And last year, pandemic couldn't do shit, and so we need to show that hey, look, if we spend $500,000 in marketing, we grow $500,000 in monthly GMV, you know, which is like 5 million per year, right? So it's a great investment. Let's do it. And so we need to do that, and then raise a Series B, hopefully 10 million, you know, and then we'll expand the team and just spend even more money on marketing, grow faster, all that good stuff. But yeah, the pandemic, my business, 90% of our customers before the pandemic were travelers. So yeah, it ruined our plans. We were growing 300% year over year.
No one's traveling right now too. Yeah.
Huh?
Like no one's traveling, so like there's not a lot of people like renting motorcycles in different cities.
Yeah, I mean it's starting to come back, but we rely a lot on European tourists. They're like half of the market, and I was also during the summers the brick and mortar rental shop run out of inventory, and so that's when I would have the best months ever. And but now they have they have the inventory and there's no and half the market. Yeah, so it's just not a good year, but hopefully in 2022 things will go back to normal, and I need to find a smart investor that understands this, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, and speaking of growth and how the business been doing for this year, where do you think the business will go in like the next 5 years? Or what's the goal?
So we first need to become the number one provider of motorcycle rentals in the United States, like number one priority. Then we need to expand into other countries because there are global network effects. If I build a brand in Europe, it's gonna help me increase the demand in the United States from European tourists.
Yeah.
And this is why Airbnb is way more profitable than Uber. Because global network effects are a lot harder to replicate than local network effects, right? And so, and then after that, or at the same time that we do that, I'm considering expanding into off-road power sports, like think ATVs, snowmobiles, jet skis, because the insurance risk is very similar to riding a motorcycle. Like the risk factors are similar, and there's a lot of overlap in the audience, and shit. Off-road power sports did really well during the pandemic. Like they grew so much that I'm wondering if it's it could now be a bigger market than motorcycles, and it's a lot easier to access because you don't need a motorcycle license. So I'm thinking that I'm gonna probably go there down the road. Like we're the company that is best positioned to enter that space.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's really cool that you're going out to other countries too, because other countries might use their population might have a higher percentage of people who use motorcycles. Like in my home country, Vietnam, we all use motorcycles. Like you'll see more motorcycles than cars. And so I feel like it would do a lot better in like other countries too, because in America it's not like as prevalent for motorcycles to be around.
Totally. In America, it's like a luxury thing, and so I like that because the gross margins are really high. That people spend like $100 per day to rent a motorcycle.
Oh,
So it's essentially a luxury market, right?
yeah.
And then in India, I've seen rentals as low as like $8 a day. And
Jeez.
yeah, So it would be really difficult to operate there. It's a much larger market, and it's certainly possible to operate there, but it would be an entirely different business than what we have in the United States. We wouldn't do credit checks. We wouldn't, it would be something else. But it's certainly a vision to go global, not just the United States.
All right, so we're about to wrap it up, but before we go, we would like to ask our guests one final question, which is, if you could give the world one final message, what would it be?
Oh man, that's deep. I'm not prepared for that one. If we don't find a way to reverse entropy, nothing we do matters.
Everything's futile, right? It's all futile in the end.
But don't be surprised if humans find a way around the second law of thermodynamics, man. It might not be futile.
Yeah.
Immortality. Are you into like AI and immortality and all that?
I mean, only big picture, it's inevitable. Computers are gonna take over.
All right, so Andrew lost his voice midway, so he couldn't talk.
Sorry.
So I'll end the episode off. But yeah, this was the episode, the CEO of Writers Share, and peace out. Hope you all liked it.